America's Podcast. America's Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to America's Podcast. I'm your host, Don Ledesma, and welcome to today's show. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty interesting one, that's for sure. I hope everybody's doing well out there. You know, we've been having just kind of bipolar weather down here in South Texas, you know, out here where I live. But, you know, how can we change that? We can't. We can't, man. It is what it is. But thank you guys for listening to the live here on Spreaker. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate that. And if you follow us, go to where it says all my links after this podcast. It'll be up on the pages, and you can follow America's Podcast. Actually, our X page is growing pretty good. It's starting. We're starting to get some followers there on X. Go follow us there, which is Twitter. And you can get a lot of nice information there. We put out a lot from NPR News, a lot from CBS, a lot from ABC. We put out news from everywhere. And then plus we give us some photos of America and what and the land of the home of the free right out there. But before we begin, I just want to thank America's military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard, you know, everybody that's out there, you know, that represents America, and especially our military. Thank you so much, National Guard. I haven't forgot about you. Yes. And, you know, we really appreciate everything that you do for America and for the struggles and the sacrifice and the ultimate sacrifice for the United States of America and for ourselves here to keep us free. And that's what it's about. Thank you guys. And thank everybody, guys, girls, everybody out there that represent our military. So, before we go forward, like I said, follow us on all these platforms. We're on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Podbean, Alexa. We are at Apple's Podcast. We're everywhere. So you can find America's Podcast there. We will give you updated information on things that happen around the world and also what's going on with, you know, recent news and politics and everything that's going that you don't get to catch up to sometimes when you're out there working or driving or just having your busy self, right? And speaking of busy self, you know, my son is in this program. It's a pre-naval academy here. He's in high school, right? And it's called NJROTC, right? And he said, "Dad, I'm having a competition. Can you go?" And I was like, "Sure." And me and the wife, he went out there and saw him out there performing because he does the rifles, and you know, they do these competitions where all these schools come in, right? And we're very, very proud of what he does and what he's been doing for the past 2 years ever since he joined, right? Because I've taught him not to be a quitter, man. You know, it's like I've always been that way. I was a Cub Scout, Boy Scout, way below, all that stuff, you know, even before I did all that, right? And I didn't quit as much as I wanted to sometimes, you know, because you're having bad days or whatever. I never quit. And I was like, you know what? Never quit. Keep going forward, because there's going to be a rainbow at the end of that dark tunnel sometimes, you know, and just learning the camaraderie of everything and having new friends and people that are doing the same things you do. And then plus you get to learn leadership, right? And that's what it's about, right? Leadership and the training that they do. Anyway, I have a photography business, right, that I do on the side, and it's called LEDZ Productions, LEDZ Productions. You'll find it all over. I do documentaries, films, things like that, right? But anyway, I went out there and shot some really cool photos. I took my older camera. I have some newer cameras. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go take some photos with my 300 millimeter zoom lens, and then I'm gonna, you know, I'm just gonna throw some photos out there. I haven't done it in a while, you know, because I'm busy podcasting, doing all kinds of things, editing for films, and I decided to shoot some photos with that old Nikon 5300, right? and I used a 300 millimeter zoom lens, which I'm glad I took because, you know, they were kind of a distance away, but I ended up getting some really, really nice photos, right? For the team. The commander texted me. He really appreciated the photos that I did for everybody out there. And, you know, I just love doing that kind of stuff, you know, for the camaraderie and, you know, just, I'm glad I was able to do it. I just put it to you that way. Right. And it's something for them to reflect on later, you know, once they grow up and grow older, and, you know, they got a nice photo of themselves actually performing, and really, I think they really came out really, really nice. But anyhow, let's move forward. Okay, so, you know, we haven't brought up anything of this. I haven't been on the podcast for a bit, but I'm going to talk just for a brief moment on what happened with the an update on the second assassination shooter of Trump, right? So we've learned about this guy, you know, what he was about. You know, he was following the Ukrainian people out there, and he had some kind of different agenda, and you know, he used to go for Trump before all this happened in 2016, and then he just kind of did a flip on Trump for some reason, right? And a lot of just kind of things have been coming out little by little about this guy, right? And he was able to put like a small manifesto of some sort, saying that if he didn't accomplish what he did, you know, there was going to be some money for somebody if they to go accomplish it, right? And you know, he was moving forward on what he was doing, even though he failed, and we're all glad he did. From, you know, on any side, you know, it's just, that's just not what you have to do. Violence is not the answer, okay? That we don't like that here in America's podcast. Nowhere out there, you know, violence is not the answer. Anyway, so they start finding out more and more about this guy. He's leaving these little manifestos. He's just kind of they're trying to figure out, he's broke yet, but he's got $150,000, and all this kind of little red flags are popping up everywhere, you know, of that he was involved with, you know, different countries as well, you know, kind of like, well, wait a minute, is there a different side of here that we're not paying attention to, and we should be paying attention to, right? So there's I'm going to play this small little clip right here, probably about a minute and a half long, about exactly on the news. This came out on NBC News here a few days ago. I'm going to throw it out to you so you guys can have a listen of what they know about this guy before we move any forward about China's war games. Here we go.
Have you briefed former President Trump on your findings so far, and has his campaign asked for any changes in his security going forward after yesterday?
So I've had a conversation with the former president. The president is aware that he has highest levels of protection that the Secret Service is providing him.
And tonight, we're learning more about the suspect's background. His North Carolina home was searched by authorities overnight. Court records show a lengthy criminal history, including a conviction for possession of a machine gun.
He had some problems with feds and stuff. I would never thought he was trying to kill the president, but
Ruth was an outspoken supporter of Ukraine who visited the country in 2022.
Thousands of people from every country around the world to come to Kyiv.
On social media, the suspect called Trump his, quote, choice in 2016, who had since become a disappointment. Ruth contributed to Democrats in 2019 and voted in a Democratic primary in 2020. He also criticized Trump, writing in April, quote, democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose. Today, Trump arguing the suspect, quote, believed the rhetoric of Biden and Harris, and he acted on it. Comments echoing last week's debate.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy.
Trump has also used incendiary language against Democrats, and authorities have not yet revealed a motive in either incident. Vice President Harris condemned political violence, writing, quote, I am thankful that former President Trump is safe. And this today from President Biden.
In America, we resolve our differences peacefully, the ballot box, not at the end of a gun.
And Garrett,
exactly. So we resolve this peacefully in the ballot box and not at the end of the gun, right? And that's actually a great statement that he did there, you know, and I'm glad he said what he said. Which was President Biden, you know, and of course Harris too condemned it. Everything out there against that would happen, right? So I just wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront a little bit. If you didn't know, maybe you did know already. This is what this guy had tried to move forward to do, right? And of course, things will start coming out more and more and more, right, as we keep going forward, right? He had this Dear World letter, and it says, this was an assassination attempt on Donald J. Trump, but I failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could master. And this is what he wrote on a piece of paper, right? A Dear World, I guess, just in case he was killed or whatever. Not everybody does it, but this guy had it already pre-planned. He had all that stuff in there. All right. So, other than that, we start getting the different stories that will start coming out later and later. And I'll give you a couple of small updates as we do a few podcasts up the road. I'm sure it'll fade off just like anything else with news does, because we have to move forward and go into the election that's coming up, right? So we all make sure that we can agree to disagree and vote for whoever you're going to vote for that's going to make a change and an impact in your life that you think is going to be, okay? So let's move forward. Now I've been keeping my eye on the war games that's been happening out there with China and the Philippines on the South China Sea, right? And it's been kind of hush hush lately, right? A lot of that has been hush hush. I don't know why they're keeping that in a sort of a back burner. You know what I mean? And I don't get why they're doing that. China's like literally on the edge of Taiwan, and they have a big interest in Taiwan, right? So they're kind of pushing, let's just say like a bully does to a smaller person or whatever. Wow, they just kind of pump their chest out and start pushing their way through, right? And this is how I see it, that they're trying to do this to Taiwan. Taiwan's not backing down though, because they are a NATO ally as well, right? So it's the protection of that which has helped Taiwan in that sense not to be taken over, right? Because they know once they step over that line, we're heading for a scaled war, right? Because there's going to be multiple entities involved as far as countries, right? And we have to be on the edge, really. We're walking on eggshells right now. So what's happening in Lebanon over there and in Israel, and they're firing rockets, they're hitting major targets out there. They just hit a target that killed this bad guy that killed over 300 Americans back in the 80s, right? They finally got and hit this guy and took him out. So as those are escalating on that side of the world, then we have this other side of the world that's running in the background when we're not watching, okay? So this is exactly what's happening. We're not watching this stuff, and they're just kind of sneaking around. And if you really think about it just for a minute, when you hear Taiwan out there, China, and they're in cahoots with Russia, with Xi Jinping and Putin, they're selling arms to each other and just kind of scratching each other's backs. Now, when they're doing these war games out there, which means they're just doing maneuvers, things like that. In other words, they're setting these scenarios for war, right? Already. Why? Right? It's almost like, look what I can do kind of thing, right? From Mad TV, Stewart. But it's the same thing as that, right? Look what I can do and look what I'm going to do if you mess with me, right? So they are conducting these just maneuvers out there that we're just not paying attention to, because our minds are focused on the election. Our minds are focused on Donald Trump and on Kamala and everything that's happening on this side of the world, plus Israel. Have you been thinking about Ukraine lately? You haven't heard anything anymore, because everything's focused on Israel now. Ever since all those riots and protesting and all this stuff, everything lost focus with Ukraine, right? So if you really think about it, there's still a battle happening there in Ukraine. If you're not a subscriber to X, go look at that because it shows everything. I mean, everything. It gets kind of gruesome as well too, right? So just kind of be forewarned when you see a lot of those images. Nothing is not blacked out. Okay, sometimes it doesn't warn you either what you're seeing, and sometimes it does. It'll tell you there's a graphic image or a graphic video. But anyway, these are the realities and the truth of war, and it is happening in Ukraine. It's still happening, but on the background, it's happening also in China, right? Where they're doing these war games. Why? And there's an article on, it's called spacenews.com. I don't know if you guys follow that, but it talks about how the war games kind of reveals that the Chinese going to attack the communications that could paralyze Taiwan, right? And so they're thinking that they want to mess with Taiwan's Starlink system first, right? So they're going to try to hit that to make sure that once Elon threw out that Starlink out there, there's thousands of satellites floating out there in our atmosphere. There's not just 100 or 50. No, there's thousands of them. Look at our. Go look it up. It's almost like we got space junk all over the place on the outside of our stratosphere there. But anyway, they're thinking that this is what they're saying, that Elon Musk replied that he was in full compliance of his Pentagon contract. Therefore, Musk refused a Taiwanese to build a secure Starlink services, and Taiwan would announce that it would be developing a Starlink constellation system of its own. So, in other words, he kind of pulled out of that. So they're saying, you know what, we're going to make our own. Since they're going to do that, this is just a more of a reason why the Chinese would not take their system out. In other words, right? What's the best way to take out anything like that, right? You hit their communications first, you hit their water supply, you hit their bridges, things like that, to where you can't do anything. Water, electricity, communications. Once you're blacked out, you're done. You know, and this is the war games, man. This is what it is. Strategic. So if you really think about it, they're getting close to doing something like this in Taiwan, right? And they're going to hit them first because they want that piece of land. They want everything that's there. And even top secret analysts have noted that China could disable Taiwan's undersea cable and disrupt its microwave and space-based communication systems under secure smokeless victory over the island, it says. So it's not just because the space race stuff. This is a vulnerability, really, in reality, because they're using that as their own communicational line to the world, right? If it's not Starlink, it's something else that they have to figure out. Now, to me, it makes total sense why they want to hit that part first, just so that way they can black that area out. Taiwan won't tell the United Nations that they're being under attack, right, or things like that. And so we would be the last ones to know by the time that, not last ones, but we still have communications. But if still, there would be a delay there, a major delay if there were to be an attack. Right. And if they hit that kind of infrastructure first. So you have to think about the war game of what actually it is and why that area. And that's why. Right. So, like I said, China has its hand in Russia. Russia has its hand in China. They both are walking in each other's pockets right now. And it's the pocketbook thing, right? Because they both have the oil. They both have, things that they both need, military resources. Right now, Putin has used a lot of military resources in Ukraine and is losing a lot of military resources. So he's got to grab a lot of that from China, right? Maybe the rifles, the ammunition, things like that, rockets, things that they need, right? So the United States is not going to do that for him, right? At all. So who else does he have? but Xi Jinping, right? So that's why they're in cahoots with each other, and this is why I say what I say. And we need to keep our eye on this, because I don't know if you ever played these kind of board games of of war and stuff like that. It's strategic, right? And if you don't play these strategic games and know the vulnerability of your opponent, then if you don't play these games, you're not going to be ahead of the game, if you know what I'm saying here, right? If you do play these games, then you're already going to know how to win, all right? And this is why they are doing what they're doing. This is in my opinion, all right? This is all in my opinion, because I have been keeping an eye on this, and I am very edgy about it right now. I know we're in the United States of America, we're just focusing on our elections, cheating, and then assassinations, and then all this stuff is happening here in the United States, to where that we just are losing focus on what's happening outside of the United States, right? When these superpowers are joining forces together to it's an alliance, so that way they know that they have each other's backs, right? And this is how it is for the start of or the beginning of World War III. We want to make sure that does not go forward, right? So why not, keep in close tabs with what these guys are doing? And sometimes we have to show face in order to make these war games or whatever they're doing out there, to make them back down. Because if we don't show face, then they're going to think they got the upper hand, right? That's just the way it is. And it's a bad thing, in my opinion, because it's almost like a bully kind of thing, right? It's a bully thing. They're just trying to bully their way into getting what they want, just like what Russia did with Ukraine, right? And because they just went in first, they showed that it looked like they were playing war games, right? This is what we saw. We saw this a week to 2 weeks before they actually attacked Ukraine, right? So why not keep our eye on these guys, right? Why not? We have to. And this is, let me see if I can grab this little news clip real quick here. This is from Fox News, and this came about maybe 7 days ago or so. And let me throw this out. Maybe you guys can hear it out there.
Staying in the CENTCOM AOR, as announced earlier today by Secretary of State Blinken, the United States has confirmed reports that Iran has transferred shipments of Fateh 360 close-range ballistic missiles to Russia, which we assess could employ them within weeks against Ukraine, leading to the deaths of even more Ukrainian civilians. To echo our State Department and White House colleagues, this is a deeply concerning development, as this partnership between Iran and Russia threatens European security and illustrates how Iran's destabilizing influence reaches beyond the Middle East and around the world. Additionally, Russian support for Iran is destabilizing as well, as Moscow is sharing technology that Iran needs. We'll continue to monitor these developments alongside our allies and partners across Europe and the Middle East, and remain steadfast in our support to Ukraine's defense from the threat these missile systems may pose to the people of Ukraine.
All right. So, and that's what we got out of that, right? Because they're watching these guys. They are watching these guys because they know that something is building, right? And we should always be watching all the time, because we don't know what these guys are.
President's point man in blaming liberals for inflammatory language.
Oops, my bad. So anyway, we should always be watching these guys, always, for doing that. And they're talking about different countries now putting their hands in the cookie jar too, right? So why not stay on top of our game? We need to, all the way. We need to be on top of our game for that same reason that we want to make sure that these guys don't try to take over, these small countries like they're trying to do already. And if we can just be what we are as steady, fast, vigilant, and just be focused on what's happening outside of our elections more, because this is the best time for them to really attack anybody or anything, because our focus is somewhere else. And they'll catch you with your pants down. Basically, that's basically what happens in war, right? So just like we were talking about Russia and Ukraine, they went out there, war games. Oh, they're just playing war games. They're just playing war games. Oh yeah, we see what they're doing there. They're going to turn around. They're going to go back home. No, they ended up attacking, right? And we thought nothing of it at first. We had our focuses on other things. And here we go again. The same exact thing is happening. So if you guys are not paying attention, please pay attention to what's going on out there in the South China Sea and in those general areas. Go look at your world news, not just your local news. Look at world news. I watch a lot of world news, but only because I like to see what's going on out there behind our backs. Really, reality. You know, we have to be focused on all of that so we can know what's going to hit us from the left side, the right side, the back, or the front, right? So we always be ready, be on the ready for war, because you know what? What's going to happen? Look, if our military is not up to par, in other words, if it has a low a military count of heads of people that they need, guess what's going to happen next? The draft, right? That is going to be next, okay? So if we don't have enough people in the military or join the military, you think we do, but really in reality, our numbers are low. So if this happens, guess what happens? Your sons, your daughters are going to go to war, okay? And they're going to be drafted. That is in law. It's always been implemented. It always tells you that, even when you do sign in for the civil service and when you're 18, male or female, this is why, right? I think up to the age of 43, you can be drafted. So just think about that just for a minute. This can be a disruption to your life, whether you like it or not, right? So always be aware of what's happening outside of our boundaries, because even though you think, well, it has nothing to do with me. I'm too busy, working, doing my life thing, doing, what I have to do for the family, work, everything. It's not going to do you no good if we're attacked in our shores, right? All that's going to come to a stop. Remember when the COVID first hit? Everything came to a complete stop. I remember standing outside my home when they told everybody stay home. I've never seen the streets dead like that. Remember the pictures of India? How before and after when that happened? How the pollution was, you couldn't even see the cities of Los Angeles, all these highly polluted areas, and all of a sudden, about a month later, the skies are clear because there was no traffic that kept everybody at home. Everything was at a complete standstill, right? So this is what war is, and this is what war will do, right? Everything will come to a standstill if we are attacked in our own backyard, okay? So this is why it's so important to keep an eye on everything that's happening out there with the news, world news, and what these guys are working with Russia, right? And it says right here, it says Putin said 15 friendly nations would observe what Moscow has claimed were some 90,000 troops and more than 500 ships and aircraft mobilized for the largest such exercise in 30 years. In other words, it says Russia actually did a war games as well. So they had drills. They did everything, just like China did. even Putin said, he goes, we are paying special attention to strengthening cooperation with our friendly countries. This is especially an important day amid raising geopolitical tension around the world, the Russian leader said. Hello? Yeah. So they had 7 days of drills. This was called Ocean 2024. The 7 days of drill that ended Monday are the latest in the recent slew of military exercises, joint patrols between Russia and China that come on the heels and vows of Putin, of Chinese leader Xi Jinping, to tighten military cooperation, even as the Kremlin wages war against Ukraine, right? So this is everything that I've been telling you guys out there. Pay attention to what exactly is happening out there, because these guys are hand in hand, and they're not going to back down, because they want to make sure that, and you got to remember these countries are huge. They're large countries. They're not small little countries. Taiwan is tiny compared to China and Russia. So just think about how large these countries are, where they can cahoots together, right? And work together. This is what they're trying to do. And I hope this doesn't happen, really. I don't. But it just kind of worries me, and it should worry everybody out there, because they're still doing drills out in the South China Sea. Taiwan's monitoring them closely, and they're telling us, like, hey, these guys are up to something, right? You need to kind of help us here. And they also said that the joint drills that the China and Russia are doing, they're questioning whether this is going to be a nuclear armed power, right? And both of these countries are not treaty allies, really, in reality. And they're afraid that they could act together in a future conflict, right? So this is the scary part, okay? I'm not trying to scare the crap out of people out there. I'm just kind of giving you a, hey, hello, something's going on here in the background. We need to keep an eye on these guys while our elections are going forward, right? And it's just keep your eye out there, right? For what's going on. It's a sneaky, man, what these guys are doing out there. Sneaky. But they want to dominate. They want to take over. It's an I want strategy, right? I want your country. I want this. I want that. It's just what it is. And the problem with that is that many people have died already. Thousands of people for that I want mentality, right? Thousands already. For somebody on top saying, I want that. Which that direct order caused the lives of millions of people, as it has in the past. History always repeats itself, man. Always. But I don't know about you. I don't want my children or grandchildren to see that or have to experience that. So let's make sure that we keep an eye on everything that's on top of what's going on in the South China Sea, because that's the only place that they're going to be able to do stuff like that, right? I mean, nobody can really hide anymore because of the the satellites, the imagery, and everything we have. I mean, how many freaking balloons have flown over the United States already, right? That we caught, it was a loose balloon. I have video of somebody zooming into that loose balloon, and there's a camera moving round and round at the bottom taking pictures and videos, right? The one from China that they shot down days after it was in our airspace, right? So just go ahead and let it take all these pictures and send all this information over there of our vulnerabilities, right? Before we shoot it down. Come on, man. Give me a freaking break here. And yeah, think about that just for a minute. So what are we going to do now, right? We're going to watch everything as it happens. And let's just hope that nothing comes from that side. Remember, you got to remember this, okay? Go to your Google Maps. Go look at the edge of Alaska on the, let's just say on the Pacific side. And look at the upper left of it. And look at Russia. The country of Russia and Alaska. Look at the gap that's in between both of those countries, right? There's 87 freaking miles in between both of those countries. That's how close they are to each other. Yeah. What a great way to cross, right? Of course, I have to do it in the summertime. Because it's too damn cold, man. We'll catch them. We'll catch them really cold up there. But anywho's. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast as I talked about China and their war games with Russia. Yeah, well, if you didn't know, now you do. All right, guys, catch America's podcast on a bunch of platforms. X, YouTube, Rumble, everything. We're not on video, we're on audio today. iHeartRadio, Spotify, you name it, we're all over, man. I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. I'm your host, Donald Ledesma. Click on all my links at the very bottom of this podcast. This will give you to all of our pages. There's a donation page. If you'd like to donate, that would be amazing. That helps keep the content and everything flowing, all right? So I really appreciate you guys. Have an amazing day. Have a blessed and American day. Stay positive. Stay focused. Watch your world news, all right? So until then, we'll see you on the next America's Podcast.